Namaskar and thank you for joining us here on our weekly program on geoeconomics. Today we'll discuss the economic environment and the policy actions that are helping India maintain strong growth momentum and also how India is strengthening its manufacturing base. Now, the Indian economy grew at 7.6% in the second quarter. It's also expected to maintain that growth in the subsequent quarters in FY24. There are various factors contributing to the current virtuous cycle, which seems like an oasis in the sense because there's so much of the world that's still facing significant headwinds. To discuss why India stands out and continues to outperform its global peers, we will be joined by Prasenjit Basu, who's the chief economist at ICICI Securities. But currently we have with us Professor Dheeraj Sharma, who's the director of the Indian Institute of Management, Rohtak. Thank you very much, Professor Sharma, for being with us. So what should India do? I mean, there's S&P report that's come out. It says that India should be strengthening its manufacturing base. What should India be doing to consolidate on manufacturing growth? Will, a strong logistic framework, for instance, help?
Well, I think, government has launched several very important initiatives, particularly PM's Gati Shakti, as well as the product-linked incentive scheme. And in addition to that, the national single window scheme. These are very, very important schemes aside from the logistics, the national logistics plan. Now, what we really need to do, I think, is to send signals in terms of more support to the foreign investors to come in, because Indian investors are already there. Foreign investors have also shown interest and have invested significantly, but it becomes even more important. But what I think now that we've just seen the election results come out in 5 states, a lot of the foreign investors sort of try to be a little apprehensive when we are closing down, coming very close to the national elections in next year. So my anticipation is that the real movement in the manufacturing segment and the investment will come in post the end of elections. We have already seen a great deal of movement. You see, the S&P report clearly indicates that they have upped the Indian growth target from 6% to 6.4%. They're also anticipating that the next year's growth will be around 6.8%. Then the forthcoming year is going to be 7%.
Yes.
My feeling is if there is a stable government in 2024 with full majority, we should be actually able to prepone India becoming the third largest economy on the nominal basis. Already on the PPP basis, we are the third largest economy. But on nominal basis, we are the third largest economy. What is anticipated by the S&P report in 2030 could actually be preponed to about 2028 or even around 2028-29, at least a year and a half ahead. If there is a, so you asked a question as to what more we need to do. I think yes, we should give a clear signal that we have a majority government, a stable government in 2024, because the schemes are already there. Product-linked incentive alone is expected to generate an impact of almost 30 to 40,000 crores, and also supposed to generate employment of more than 500,000 in a span of the next few years. Because there are many organizations, from pharmaceutical to manufacturing to electronics, who are already taking advantage of PLI. Yes. As far as manufacturing of cell phones, manufacturing of automobile parts, India is already called the pharmacy of the world. That's another area where we've been doing splendidly well. So I think we are on track. We should see even bigger surge in investment in the first quarter of 24-25.
Professor Sharma, also, how effective has skill development of workers and increased female participation in the workforce been in sustaining these high growth numbers?
Well, you see, I would still say that we have a lot more to do. We have done a lot. India is a huge economy, but I must tell you, some surveys done by our institution, even today, one of the banes of manufacturing sector particularly, there has been a great impetus on infrastructure development, by the recent government and the budgetary provisions which were made in March 2023. So much focus on infrastructure, yet we continue to have a great deal of difficulty in getting skilled labor, particularly masons, carpenters, electricians, individuals who would lay down some of the fiber optic for us. Skilled workers is a challenge, a very big challenge. I think we continue to produce a large number of skilled people, but I think we have an insatiable desire to have more because there is such huge demand. I'll give you a statistic which will surprise you that on an average, a construction project gets delayed by about 2 months, 12 months, which is a delay of about 14 to 15%. I have some reports on Gantt chart which are available. 12 to 13% delay simply on account of inability of getting technical labor during critical times, such as monsoon, such as holidays, Chhath Puja. These are some of the slack periods. So I think continuity and development of bench strength for these skilled workers will be a big requirement as we go forward, because the plans are there, the outlays are there, they need execution, and we still have a lot of work to do in that department.
Professor Sharma, also we keep harping on the digital public infrastructure and its impact. Is it possible to quantify how much actually has happened, how it has speeded up the general economic activity in our country?
Well, let me give you an illustration, and we have actually experimentally verified this. So I'll just give you one example. Within the IIM system, on an average 6 years ago, the data consumption or the data requirement of a student was about half a gigabyte it's half a gigabyte was the requirement of the data of a typical average IIM student 6 years ago. Today, that requirement has also gone up by almost 20 to 25 times. So this is just an exemplification of how data is getting consumed. It's not just getting consumed for entertainment, it's getting consumed for various other things, which means today, a requirement for digital infrastructure, for monitoring, for planning, for controls, for accountability. It is incredible that how the digital infrastructure provides now real backbone of almost all industries. So India, again, has got a humongous talent in terms of human resources, and also serves as the back-end office of the world when it comes to IT projects. So if I simply were to estimate this, that between 2017 and 2023, in a 6-year period, the requirement and the reliance on the data and digitization should have at least quadrupled. That's the level of impact of digital transformation that you're going to see. And going forward, I anticipate that by about 2028, another 5-year period, the data and digitization requirements are again going to quadruple. Okay. So the IT companies will have a very, very big role to play in all industries. It could be, even MSMEs integrating themselves to get the best possible chance of getting the lowest possible prices on raw material. Right. Reverse auctions on some of the projects these are all part of that whole gamut of digital transformation that we're experiencing in India today.
So let's welcome Mr. Prasenjit Basu, Chief Economist of ICICI Securities, who's also joined us at this time. Mr. Basu, Morgan Stanley expects private consumption growth to gather pace. It's already picking up. I mean, our domestic demand is pretty good. According to this latest report, it's 61% of GDP. How much more upside is there? Is there, people talk about a gap between rural and urban demand. Is there such a big gap?
Oh, well, I think there's been a pickup all around. My forecast for the second quarter was 7.6%. So I wasn't at all surprised. And I've since upgraded my forecast for the full fiscal year to 7.9%. I expect that is going
Mr. Basu, we don't seem to have a good connection with you. We'll try and
to
re-establish
11%
that.
year on year in the latest
Yeah.
quarter.
We're not able to hear you properly. I think the connection is not as good as we would like. I hope that our production team will rectify that, and we'll get back to you. But Professor Sharma, would you like to come in on that question about domestic demand and whether there's a gap between rural and urban demand? Professor Sharma?
I personally think that the rural demand has more possibilities of growth because you see, the rural demand sort of had really stifled during the COVID period. And I think we have still not totally availed the potential of the rural demand. So I still think that we can leverage on the rural demand. We are anticipating a good year, a good harvest this year going forward. I don't believe that the farmers now would be contingent just upon just containing themselves to regular farming activities. We've recently done a study for Ministry of Agriculture, and we found that crop diversification is being taken up. There is a potential there as well. So I personally see that during this study, we found that in the last 5 years, what they call a theka, in the northern India, a lot of these farmlands are actually cultivated by not the owners of the land, but they're rented out for cultivation. The rental rates of that per acre have gone up by almost 12 to 15%.
Okay.
Demonstrable evidence that there is a potential in the agricultural sector. So because the farmer is, the tiller is paying X amount of money more than what the tiller was paying 4 or 5 years ago, which shows that there is going to be more income. And by more income, you mean there'll be more surplus income. When you have more surplus, that will translate into consumption. So my feeling is that the rural demand will be higher than the urban demand in the next few quarters.
Professor Sharma, we seem to have a bad connection with Mr. Basu, so bear with us. I mean, we'll have to, it's like a one-on-one interview with you now. Growth is also fueled by capex, and we are seeing that there's greater participation also of the private sector in capex. But do you see this continuing? I mean, both from the growth side as well as the maintenance side of capex.
Well, you see, capex can only come from, I would say, 3 sources, which is government, our own government, the private sector, and the foreign investors. We've seen, according to the government reports from 2014 all the way till now, the foreign investment has more than doubled. I mean, from about $45 billion odd to about $85–90 billion now. So if we expect to grow, we have possibly the easiest route would be getting foreign investors. The second difficult route would be to ask our own people to invest more. But then we always have the third option of debt. I mean, India, we have really not leveraged a whole lot. We are quite well positioned in terms of our fiscal outlays. We have been fiscally prudent in the future. And we have, there has been a talk about increasing debt, but I don't think that we are leveraged as high as some of the Western European and North American economies. We've still got a long way. So what I'm trying to say is that capex has to come in, and it will bear the results. So even if we take the worst possible option of getting the capex through debt, raising funds internally by the government, we're still well placed because those assets are going to be utilized by the citizens, and citizens will pay off those assets.
Right.
Just go around any part of India now, you would see humongous outlay of roads, and we've got tolls toll is getting collected. Private players are there. If there was no money to be made, I don't think the private players would be there maintaining and collecting tolls. So therefore, citizens are using the infrastructure. See, that's the beauty in Indian context. When you build infrastructure, the infrastructure is likely to pay itself off because there is a great demand for utilization of that infrastructure. So I'm not really worried about the capex part, but I'd summarize. I think foreign investors will come in. Our own industry is very much capable, but the last resort is there. You can always raise funds through debt, which the government does time and again.
Dr. Sharma, a periodic labor force survey that came out last month showed significant job creation, especially highlighting female participation. Now, if we look at gender equity in the workplace, and if the developed countries who are supposedly ahead of us, has it really helped? I mean, to what extent has that been one of the reasons for development in the developed countries? And how is India taking this forward? Because when women come into the workforce, I mean, we can double the speed of our growth engine in a sense.
Well, you see, the greatest boon for India was the IT sector. IT sector today boasts of about 40% of their workforce being women. 1991 onward, we have seen this huge surge in women coming into the workplace. This changes the dynamics of a household. The typical consumption basket diversifies because now you have both the members of the adult members of the family, or so-called the earning members. Both the members have become earning members. So the basket of the family, the consumption basket changes, it diversifies. Offers more opportunity for utilization of services as well. It also results in job creation for the support sector. So that way, adding women into the workforce since 1991 has been a game changer. But what you were mentioning about the labor survey,
yes.
Now, although it's a positive sign, but I'm really happy to report to you that already in the informal sector, particularly in the agriculture sector, any person in India just has to go around the agriculture. Agriculture still, dominates in terms of employment. I think we've got about 55–60% of our population still directly or indirectly linked to agriculture. Go to any open field, anywhere in India, I would say, you would see more women participation than men.
Okay.
So the labor numbers, although very encouraging, but those have been the fact of the matter as such in India. Now, what may be interesting is that in Haryana, Parivar Pehchan Patra data typically indicates that there is more availing of government schemes by the women. Now, that's a very heartening sign because that goes on to demonstrate that from utilization of government schemes and availing of government benefits, also women are coming forward. Which is encouraging because then they can also have that impact on their families to maybe look for escalation to the next level, moving upward, as they say, because their awareness of their rights and awareness of the government support increases, utilization increases, and then they encourage others too to join the bandwagon.
Dr. Sharma, the US and China, they are several times bigger than the other economies in the top 5. Now, investments, checkbook diplomacy from these countries can greatly influence trade flows. So how effective then has India's approach been of South-South cooperation to counter this?
Well, you see, US is the largest economy, and I continue to emphasize that US will continue to dominate the world economics affairs for next 50 years. Very simply, why? Because you see, today the entire banking software is US. The US shapes, a great deal of thinking in terms of innovation, in terms of products and services. Now, China has become an economic behemoth in the last 20 odd years. At $19 trillion approximately, China is approximately 5.5 times India's size of the economy. And China went through this huge initiative by virtue of which they wanted to connect everybody to this One Belt, One Road initiative and the China initiative. You'd be surprised that at one point in time, 153 countries, all the way from Venezuela to Fiji, were somehow directly or indirectly signing up for this initiative of China. But recent debacle has taken place. You would have noticed that the only G7 nation, which was Italy, has backed off its signing of the cooperation with China in terms of its initiative. So China has had a setback. Although China's debt diplomacy or debt traps are getting a negative light in recent times, therefore India becomes more reliable for many of the countries in the region. India has done well. We have helped out Bangladesh, we have helped out Sri Lanka, we help out other neighbors as well, Burma. This policy not just allows us to have a deeper traction, because India has never been seen historically as a country which has territorial ambition.
Yes.
We support some of these countries even financially when they are in times of trouble, but we have never exhibited that this is out of territorial ambition. Whereas when it comes to China,
yes,
it is always viewed through the lens of territorial expansionism. And so is, greatly in recent times, American investments are viewed through the lens of territorial expansionism. So I think India is well placed, and India is very measured in its approach.
If we look at remittances, how are remittances, from India's growing diaspora impacting India's growth? It also could be having an impact on entrepreneurship as well, because a lot of people who go abroad, study, come back and invest, start companies. And also, I mean, if we talk a little bit about how the Modi government has reached out to the diaspora in a sense and re-established that connect as the living bridge.
Well, I think diaspora is very, very important, not just from the standpoint of remittances, but also from the demonstrable evidence of Indian presence across the world. Now, Indians in the United States have done very well. They are the #1 economic group. They have the highest per capita in the US. They also boast of the highest per capita income of any ethnic group in Canada as well. I think they are inching towards becoming one in Australia as well. This shows the strength of Indian wisdom, not just the remittances. Remittances wise, I can give you some numbers. I mean, 2022, we saw about $111 billion, which is supposed to be the highest. Mexico was after that, about $61 billion. $111 billion is definitely helpful. I mean, remittances come very, very important. But I think government has taken some of these steps, particularly Ministry of External Affairs efforts have to be appreciated, that, we are using our people to go abroad as a strategic method, I would say. It's a strategic direction that we've taken.
Okay.
People migrating, helping out in projects in other countries, settling down has to be done in a very strategic manner. We have cooperation with many countries in the Gulf to send our people there.
Yes.
There are defined policies. Those policies are oftentimes relaxed. Recent times there have been relaxations by MEE to send people to Middle East. I think they're all positive signs, because $111 billion is a lot of money. But larger thing is our presence of Indians and the reflection of Indian performance through Indian wisdom. And Indian wisdom is what's going to define the next century, or this century, I must say.
Indeed. You talk about the Gulf countries. Now, despite them giving the impression of being rich, they are small in comparison to the size of the Indian economy. What is India's true potential then, if we compare? Because we can see the Gulf looking really very rich in terms of per capita and things like that. But the importance also of harnessing a vision like Amrit Kal. India is in a golden age or a golden period for growth right now, and setting high targets.
You see, Middle East is very important partner of India. Very, very important partner. Why? We have traditional ties, we have linkages. Even today, in common parlance in UAE, they don't call their currency, they call it rupiah. Even today,
yes.
They continue to use that term. We have a very big presence in the UAE. I think safely 50% of the entire foreign population in UAE would belong to India. Safely, I'm giving these numbers. Overall, I think the Indian population would be 1/3 of the UAE's population. Again, it is the single largest group in Saudi Arabia, single largest group in Qatar. In Oman too, we have a very large presence. Now, the recent initiative where the new corridor is being planned between Mumbai and Europe, going through the Gulf of Oman, all the way through Saudi Arabia, entering into Europe. That, I think, again, will cut the size of, cut the duration of traveling of entire
Yes.
the container from Europe to India
Yes.
by about 4 to 5 days. So those are all economies which would come.
Sure.
I think, you know, the Middle East is built on the shoulders and bread and sweat of a lot of Indians.
Absolutely.
So
we are running short of time, Professor Sharma. So one last question. You know, India's economic influence is continuing to grow. We can see that. But rather than being a counterweight to China, is there a case, you know, like people were talking at the beginning of the century, that it is the century of the Asian giants? Is it possible for us to actually work together, India and China?
Well, you see, we are already working together. We are mature countries. I must tell you that despite our conflicts, we have handled our border dispute in quite a mature manner. India has stood up to China, and China has appreciated India standing up to it. Our trade has only grown. We are not immature countries where, you know, border conflict or border dispute disrupts the trade. India should leverage its position to have a greater balance in terms of export and import with China. I'm sure and I'm quite confident that it is in the interest of China as well as in the interest of India to work together to position themselves to create a better trading environment.
Okay.
Now you see, with ongoing hostilities between US and China, it becomes even more important for China to reconcile some of its differences with India and develop for the greater good of the world.
Okay.
To come up and cooperate.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Professor Dheeraj Sharma, Director of the Indian Institute of Management, Rohtak, for, you know, comprehensively discussing about India's potential and why India is continuing to keep that growth momentum going, and looking ahead as well, why India continues to be the flavor of the global economy, the season in a sense. Thanks very much for being with us. S&P's Global Credit Outlook 2024 projects India to be the fastest growing emerging market globally. And they prescribe a path where India should evolve into the next major global manufacturing hub. We talked about that with Professor Sharma. But India's growth is projected to show this upward trajectory right up to at least 2026-27. We know that the Sensex and the Nifty are at all-time highs, and clearly that reflects a very buoyant mood. Thanks very much for watching. Namaskar.